Hey, Brian and I were sitting here just talking and we thought we were actually live. but I'm Chuck from KyleCoaching. Thank you for everybody who's watching today. I have the absolute pleasure of talking with Coach Brian Abers of BriHop Coaching. The funny thing is Brian is also my coach on the track. So just a little Palomares on Brian. He gets embarrassed when we do this. Yeah, that look. He's got a world championship. He's got 21 national championships, both at the elite and masters level, and been racing for about 40 years.
Going on 41, yeah.
So thanks, Brian, for coming in. Hey, for anybody that's watching, if you want to, throw down in the comment where you're calling from or where you're watching from. And I just got a thing. Oh, I just got a text saying, hey, people are waiting. So just throw down your name and where you're watching from, and we'll say hi. And if you've got any questions, throw them in the comments and we will answer them. So Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Chuck. Thanks for having me. And, I think everybody needs to know that we have a very symbiotic relationship. While I coach you on the track, you are an accomplished coach in your own right, and coach myself and about the vast majority of my athletes on the nutrition side as well. I'm primarily a track guy, but yeah, Chuck handles all our nutrition needs as well. So very accomplished, and it's a pleasure to be here, Chuck.
Thank you very much. So one of the funniest things I get is the question of when should our season start? When does 2025 start? 2024, whichever, pick a year. And from a roadie perspective, it's almost always there's some expectation that they're going to start like on 1 January. I'm just kind of holding off for the New Year's. Kind of funny when I look at my training plan, I started my 2025 season about 2 weeks ago. So what do you say, Brian? When does 2025 start?
Yeah, well, my first response was when did your last race of 2024 end? And then I guess the less snarky response is, I think 2025 starts a couple of weeks after. You've got to give yourself a little bit of a break, but your competition ain't waiting until January 1st. Just like when you're heading to the gym, I'll do it on Monday. Well, that's just 3 days of missed time. So I think it's very important that it actually starts when your previous season ends.
So Brian, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chuck.
It looks like my camera just said it got too hot. So I'm going to see if I can switch over to a different camera while we go. I'll be right back.
So if you've got any comments, questions, definitely shoot them in. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, so we'll wait for Coach Chuck to get back before we really delve into this. But I think it's important to as far as when does the season start, get back after it as soon as you've recovered from the previous season's work. And start that base building, that foundation for the rest of the season. Chuck, what do you think?
Hey Brian, how are you? This is the problem with live stream. It's just, got to roll with it. And John, white shoes. Yeah, LOL. Yeah, exactly. That's how we kind of feel on this one. All right. So, but back to when does your season start? And we agree that, that this is a great opportunity during the fall and early winter to really get in some of those base miles and stuff like that. You and I were talking about this a few minutes ago. It was back in the day, we would always lock out our big chain ring, and we were told never to do anything more than tempo. And that was what you did during the winter months. But it seems like to me that times have changed, especially if you think about Zwift and now Training Peaks acquiring Indevelo, and you've got the Training Peaks Virtual, which if no one's tried Training Peaks Virtual, if you've got a Training Peaks premium account, the subscription's free. I would give that a go. I think it's going to give Zwift a run for its money. But the reason why I bring that up is you've got winter racing. you've got people who are doing these high interval racing type of things on an indoor trainer. Do you think those are positive, negative? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a positive. I think any separation, full separation, the conventional wisdom has always been, you ride base miles, and on the track side of it, it's you put a 74-inch gear on a fixed gear, and you ride it there. You don't even have a front derailleur to lock out at that point. There's some merit to that. Building that foundation is always a good thing, but getting away from the fundamental things that you do as a bike racer, I think, just puts you in a hole that you have to dig out of down the road, come February, March.
So in your mind, what are the primary things that a cyclist, whether you're a track or roadie or gravel guy or gal, what do you think should be their primary focus during the kind of the base winter months?
Well, I think it's a triple focus. To what extent kind of depends on what the big thing you need to work on. Obviously going back and redeveloping efficiency on the bike, aerobic capacity. I'm a big believer in a very solid strength plan, building that muscle that you're not going to be able to build, down the road because you're spending more and more time on the bike. And finally, body composition, right? If we, there's not that many of us that can't stand to lose a couple pounds. This is the time to do it. And while there's a bit of a conflict, everybody's heard about, bodybuilders bulking, in the off season to develop the maximum amount of muscle that they can put on. You have that conflict. Obviously, you can't train in a slight caloric deficit and put on as much muscle as you can, but combining those things and being really structured about how you're doing it, I think it makes it possible to make gains in all three realms of that.
Nice. So, the way that I typically look at it is I look at it from the elements of fitness view, muscular endurance, muscular strength, cardiovascular endurance, flexibility, and body composition. And I typically tell my clients is like, look, muscular strength, that's done in the gym. Muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance, that's done on a bike. Flexibility is done in your living room floor. And then body composition is done in your kitchen. So with that said, you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, or not in your kitchen.
Fair enough. With that said, and, goal setting and trying to be motivated during the winter months, most athletes have started to understand what the value of that gym workout, what that value of that strength workout is. So in your experience, between, let's say, November and January, what should be their focus? What should they be trying to do in the gym?
Well, I think, my belief is, I'm really big into the compound lifting, squats, deadlift, military press, things that they're involving a lot of muscle groups, simply because you get the most bang for the buck in the amount of time you're spending in the gym. If you want to spend 4 hours in the gym, hitting every muscle group individually, that's great. But most of us don't have the time or the patience to do something like that. Really engaging, twofold, really. So, good range of motion, good solid base, proper technique, proper form, injury prevention. Obviously, if you're putting a bunch of weight on your back, things can go wrong if you're not very careful about how you're doing it. And then building that hypertrophy phase, growing that muscle, adding those muscle fibers that are going to pay dividends down the road. The point I guess I would make that I get a lot from more of the endurance side of track is I don't want to gain a bunch of mass. I don't want to gain a bunch of muscle. Typically if you're training on the road, if you're a road guy, road girl, track endurance, you're probably not going to, because you're probably spending so much time on the bike that you're not going to, you're not going to look like Lee Chaney or somebody by the end of the hypertrophy phase.
I jokingly tell my clients sometimes they'll be like, well, I don't want to gain bulk. And I'm like, look, if you can put on 15 pounds of muscle, then we're in the wrong sport.
Yeah.
We should probably be trying something a little different. But, with that said, so kind of the, tips for the folks watching, if we're talking about, going into, of course, the first 2 or 3 weeks, if they've not been going to the gym regularly, then they need to be just doing kind of full body twice a week, rep ranges to about, 10 to 12, about 10 to 12, about 70% of what they feel like they could lift. But then after that, going into hypertrophy phase, which for those who don't know, hypertrophy just basically means just building muscle. That's just growing the muscle bed. What do you think as far as, what should they be doing, kind of giving them a tip for the next couple of months? What should they be doing and about how long?
Like you said, I think probably a 2 to 3 week period of reasonably lightweight, with full range of motion, really working on technique, making sure the eccentric is, on the way back up with the squat is concentric, on the way down is eccentric, for example. So the eccentric to concentric ratio about 3 to 1, slowing the eccentric down to really grow that muscle, really develop the strength to be able to do that. And then probably a 6 to 8 week period of, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 reps with 75 to 80% of maximum 1 rep max stuff. What you want to do is have a progressive overload. If it's not heavy and it's not hard, you're probably not getting the gains you can possibly get for it. I mean, if I curled my coffee cup that's sitting there, 100 times a day, I'm just going to get really good at curling my coffee cup. I'm not actually going to get any stronger. I'm not going to actually grow any muscle to be able to curl a bigger coffee cup. So you want to be able to get in and start adding that progression, either with reps. I like the 8 to 12 because, if you're hitting 8 at first, you've got the challenge of getting it up to 12 before you have to actually add some weight to it. But however you progress, it has to be a continued loading period.
So if you had a athlete who asked why go to the gym, what would be, other than because the gym's where you build muscular strength, what is the benefit that they will get from doing that? And then I'll tell you a little story that I think is interesting.
Okay, sure. Obviously you get the effects of being stronger, generate the potential to generate more power, provided that your next phases apply that. Speed, muscular endurance, all of these things are going to be, huge benefits from the gym. Something else to think about. I had a rider ask me the other day why we were doing so much shoulder work. Well, when you fall off a bike, that's where you tend to land. So we can have a little bit more muscle mass there and a little bit more muscular support on the bone structures themselves. The likelihood of injury is significantly reduced as well.
Yeah, before I tell the story, one of the things I tell my, especially people who are doing time trials, is that once their body starts to collapse because their body's getting weak in the top, it changes the pedal stroke because it changes their hip angle.
Yep.
And so they're actually, having a stronger torso, a posterior chain, it actually allows them to stay in that time trial position for a longer period of time and maintains their hip angle. But here's an interesting one. I had an athlete who in cyclocross would get cramps all the time. So when you talk about cramping, typically most people go with the idea that it must be dehydration, it must be electrolyte imbalance, it must be these type of things. When we think about cyclocross, the chances of dehydration, typically most people go in a little dehydrated to start with, but the chances of dehydration is greatly decreased because you're not that hot. You're just not running that hot. And we basically figured out that what was going on was a muscular imbalance. And during the cyclocross race, he was so heavily pushing on the right leg, it eventually caused his right hamstring to start to cramp, because you had the muscle trying to fire and come back simultaneously, thus cramp. So that was kind of we actually fixed his cyclocross cramp through working in the gym, which is kind of neat.
And that's a great point. Muscle imbalances, left side, right side, anterior, posterior, any of these things are going to affect your cycling. A lot of the upper body stuff we do is not designed to, look good on the beach. It's designed to, to support that structure, to support that core. That's actually the only thing that's you're pushing against to drive down on the pedals, to actually pedal the bike. When you're doing a leg press, you've got a nice back, nice chair you're sitting in. You've got something to push against. The only thing you have to push against on the bike is going to be the core. And we want to make sure all of those muscles are in balance, front, back, side to side, all of those things to be able to operate the bike as efficiently as possible.
Awesome. So being the 15th of, the 12th of November, they should, if they've been going to the gym, they should probably go into a hypertrophy phase.
Yes.
About
Absolutely.
6 to 8 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks.
And it depends, so I skew toward the track side, and I myself am a sprinter. So, it's going to be a 6 to 8 week thing for me, probably 4 to 6. For more of the endurance athlete, and but definitely at least 4, 8 is probably more than adequate to start building the strength and power side of that equation.
So then it takes us into January, and what should they be focusing then? I'm assuming force and power.
Yep, force and power. So we're going to start reducing reps. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 reps. We're going to get 85-90% of 1 rep max, and we're going to continue to add to that. So if I can knock out 3 or 4 sets of 5 at X amount of weight, on the squat, and I'm doing that consistently, it's time to actually move the weight up. It's time to increase the weight, keep the reps the same, and just really work on that bridging of the muscles within that structure.
So that covers kind of the gym stuff. What about on the aerobic fitness? Do you think we would focus more for aerobic fitness? From your perspective, is this a good time to start working FTP? That's what I have a tendency to do to a lot of my athletes. Being on a trainer, it's typically very hard to do any type of anaerobic capacity unless you're fortunate enough to have a watt bike. So your typical kicker, it's going to be a little harder to do anything more than maybe a 1 minute effort. So what do you think during the next couple months that they should be looking at?
Yeah, I think definitely working on FTP, definitely getting those that higher level aerobic intensity up, and again, coming from the track side, this is we never really stop doing anaerobic efforts, just because the anaerobic system is so hard to build and so easy to just have it go away. So we want to make sure that we're constantly, throwing something along those lines in during a typical week. But yeah, building, hitting that FTP side of the thing is going to be, I think a really critical time to be able to do that. And nice. Yeah, the problem with with the kicker, anything along those lines, it gets it's more designed. It's not designed for the world I live in, certainly, but a useful tool if applied correctly, nonetheless.
Right. So if anybody's got any questions, don't forget, you can throw them down in the comments and we'll get to them. So what questions do you have, Brian? What are your thoughts?
So my question is, I know how I structure my gym program for my track athletes. The question I have is what, and you're in a unique position to be able to answer that. What are the differences and the similarities between a functional strength program on the road side of it versus a track specific one?
Yeah, it's coming to coming from a road perspective and being into the track. I mean, that was a very different because we typically would do kind of a couple weeks, like I said, introductory to the gym type of thing. I think the biggest difference isn't necessarily what the structure is, but just kind of the overall time period. And so we would do a couple weeks of introductory, go into the gym, do some hypertrophy, focusing in on lower body and posterior chain, then go into kind of maybe a maximal strength, some force production, and then immediately into maintenance, and then holding maintenance in season all the way to this time next year. So where track, looking at how you prescribe the workouts and so forth, going from a very periodized, hypertrophy, force production, kind of a little bit of a reset, back to it again, and going through the entire season. I mean, hell, you and I were trying to outlift each other at a gym, 2 weeks before Worlds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That is not a roadie mentality.
No, but on the other hand, I don't recall either of us doing a 5-hour ride at any given point during that phase. So, and it's all relative to what you're trying to do. It's like Dan asked, what is the most common winter training fail? What do you think the most common winter training fail is?
Not training.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah.
Not going to the gym. Not, thinking that you have to have this 2 months of off. And during that 2 months, getting, muscle atrophy, getting fat, nutrition, we got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, so I think that's part A. And then part B would be, the excuses of I can't do a Saturday ride because it's too much snow or road conditions or whatever. Not thinking, wait a minute, what's an alternative? Sure. Do I have cross-country skis? Do I have snowshoes? Do I have a mountain bike that, I'm going to go stupid slow, but I'm still getting that in?
And I think all of those are excellent points. Christmas, Thanksgiving, probably about the worst time in all of the entire year to stop training because of that lack of caloric deficit. Everything is revolving around food at that point, which is not optimal if we're trying to stay lean and mean, right? You bring up a really good point in the sense that there's something else to do. I hate sitting in my living room on a trainer, it's just not my thing. I want to go outside. I will go to unbelievably great lengths to ride in a Colorado winter outside just to avoid it, and one of the things I think about is when I'm out of town, when I'm traveling for something, I have a gym membership with a box gym that I hang on to simply because it gives me gym access in most of the places I end up going, at least in the States. And I will jump into a spin class for the same reasons, because I would rather jump into a spin class than sit in a hotel gym on an exercise bike or dragging a bunch of equipment around. There's benefit to be had with that. Everybody in the cycling world kind of poo-poos the idea of a spin class. It's like, I'm a real cyclist. I don't need to go to spin class. If you're disciplined, you can make a spin class really, really, really challenging. And that's something I will do rather than sit on a trainer in my living room, if at all possible. At the end of the day, when I can't find anything else to do, you know what? Discipline's got to trump everything else. So I'm going to sit on the trainer in my living room. You don't have to like it. You just kind of have to do it.
So that gives us a great segue, because we've got about 5 more minutes. One of the things that we had talked about is, what about mental toughness and motivation during the winter? You just brought up, from your perspective, how difficult it is to sit on a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I are stupid enough to get on about anything else and just try to go downhill. What do you think, what are some tips to be consistent during the winter, especially when the weather and shorter daylight?
I think a couple of them, is make a game out of it. Make it something you want to do. Throw a backpack on and throw a bunch of rocks in the backpack and go hike up a hill or something. There's a whole litany of things that you can do that doesn't involve a bike, that is going to give you, that strength component, that cardiovascular component. If you're in Michigan, if you're in somewhere in Michigan that's not near that velodrome, and you're dealing with 4 feet of snow, go snowshoeing, go cross-country skiing, go hit the pool, do whatever it is you need to do to stay on the gas. Once you develop that habit of, I am going to go train regardless of what the weather is, regardless of whether I hate being on that trainer or not, I'm going to do it, because ultimately, we all have our goals. And I think it's very important that we remember our goals. We break them down into small pieces, and we adhere to those. I make everybody fill out a packet, involving goals and objectives and how we plan to get there. I know you do the same. That would be one of the pieces of advice, I would start with at the beginning of the season is, okay, what do I need to do? And what are the steps I need to do to get there? And try to keep that forefront in your mind.
I 100% agree on the goal side. And if anybody wants to look, we'll throw a link down in the comment below of an article about goal setting. But I think goals is one of those things that people kind of, they think about, but they really don't think about them. Does that make sense? I mean, They're like, oh, this is, and a goal is not, I'm going to win national championship, because number one, you don't know who's going to be there. You don't know if there's going to be a pandemic. I mean, 2020, a bunch of people had a lot of goals that just went out the window because they were all set around events.
Yep, absolutely.
But you can have a goal of getting to 18% body fat, and it's irrelevant of a pandemic or who shows up to race. And
whether there's a trainer on the in your living room or not, for that matter, those are very actionable goals that can be achieved really in a whole host of fashions.
So, well, we're right now at about 30 minutes, and that's what we kind of promised people. Any closing thoughts?
No, I think if you've got any questions, feel free to shoot them to us. Be happy to answer them. Chuck, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed this. This has been fun.
No, it's been a pleasure. And in the description, you'll have emails for both, Brian and I. If you're interested in either program, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I think we should do this again.
I think we should. I like I said, I very much enjoyed it, and would love to do it again.
And if anybody's got any topics that they'd like to see talked about, let's do that. Throw those down in the comment too. And Brian, let's do this sooner than later.
Sounds like a plan, Chuck.
All right. Thank you for everybody who watched, and we will be on again.
Take care.